Okay, so welcome everyone. Good to see everyone. I'll start with an introduction. Welcome again. So good to be together. Happy to be learning with you as always. Today's class is the Poetics of Mishnah, a methodological approach with Rabbi Dr. Avi Walfish and Rabbanit Dr. Adina Sternberg. This class is part of Drisha's ongoing Mishnah projects dedicated to the memory of a great lover and student of Mishnah, Rivka Rosenwein, Zichrona Livracha. Just a few words for those of us who are just coming now. I'll be promoting you to a panelist that would allow you to be able to ask questions during class or unmute yourself and sort of verbally participate in the class. You're welcome to decline if you don't want to be promoted to a panelist, but that would just allow you to be able to unmute and speak during the class. We would love to see your faces and feel like we're together sort of in a class setting. So if you're able to, if your situation right now allows, we would love if you can start your video so we can see you and feel like we're learning together. Just in terms of just sort of digital hygiene, please stay muted when you're not speaking. You're welcome to unmute and participate in the class whenever you would like and make comments and ask questions, but just be sure to be muted when you are not actively participating, just to make sure we don't have background noise. If you're watching us live on Facebook, you're welcome to make a comment there, and I will verbally read the comment to Dr. Sternberg. And if you are here on Zoom, you're welcome to write a question or a comment here in the chat box as well as unmuting. As a reminder, this class is being co-taught by Rabbi Dr. Avraham Walfish and Rabbanit Dr. Adina Sternberg. They alternate weeks in topics, and this is our first week with Rabbanit Dr. Adina Sternberg. Dr. Sternberg holds a BA in Bible from Hebrew University and an MA and PhD in Talmud from Bar Ilan University. She has studied at Lindenbaum, Migdal Oz, Matan, and other schools. Rabbanit Sternberg has taught at a variety of academic and religious institutions and is currently at Matan. We're so happy to have her with us. And yes, with this, I'll just turn this to you, Rabbanit Sternberg.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. So hi, everybody. I'm Adina, and I'll be teaching this class. It's actually an interesting experience for me to co-teach a class with somebody else. So I'm not sure what he said and what I'm going to say, but I can definitely say that we think in a similar path. So I'm pretty sure that the things will work together. What we're going to do today is we're going to see how we can better understand the Mishnah when we detect, when we employ literary tools. Just like in any text, when we read a text, if we notice the tools that the author is using, when we notice the metaphors or the similes, when we notice the hyperboles, when we notice allusions, everything that we notice can give an extra level of meaning and understanding to what the text is trying to say. Now, on one hand, it's obvious that any text, if we notice the tools, we'll be able to understand better. On the other hand, it's not so obvious to look at the Mishnah as a literary text. We're used to looking at the Mishnah as a sort of halachic text, even if it does include in it some Agada and some stories, but in general, it's a halachic text. So we're not expecting to find there a lot of thought behind the way it's presented and the wording of the different halachot or mishnayot. But when we start looking for it, then we'll find it everywhere. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to look at one chapter that really all you need is this chapter, and you can see so many interesting and meaningful techniques that are employed. Okay, so I'm going to start with sharing the screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it perfectly.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm starting off with what I sent previously for those of you who wanted to prepare before. And this is the first chapter in Mishnah Tanit. Let's see if I can make it a little bit bigger. Okay.
Would you like to, sorry to interrupt, would you like to change it to present mode, or do you prefer to have it this way? It's whatever.
Second, I can't.
Let me see. But whatever is best.
Let's just leave it like this.
I can see it.
Okay. It also allows me to keep you guys in, so I can keep looking at you on the side of my screen. Okay, so the Mishnah, I don't know how many of you have prepared it or not. We're going to go through it together, try to understand what's going on, and then think about all kinds of different considerations. So the Mishnah starts like this. Me'ematai mazkirin gvurot kshamim. So lazkir is to mention or remind. I like the idea of reminding. We're reminding God that he brings the rain. We're not asking for it yet, but we're reminding him. It's very subtle. We're going to start with reminding, and then maybe God will remember, and then maybe afterwards we can also ask for the rain. So when do we start reminding or mentioning the might of the rain? Rabbi Eliezer Omer, miyom tov harishon shel chag. Rabbi Yoshua Omer, miyom tov ha'acharon shel chag. What chag are we talking about here? When we say chag in general, in Chazal literature, we mean Sukkot. Okay, so either from the first day of Sukkot or from the last day of Sukkot, we start mentioning. Amar lo Rabbi Yoshua, ho'il ve'ein hagshamim ela siman klala b'chag, lama mazkir. Rabbi Eliezer wanted us to start reminding or mentioning from the first day of Sukkot. Rabbi Yoshua said we should wait till the last day of Sukkot. Rabbi Yoshua says we don't want rain on Sukkot. It's a siman klala. It's a sign of a curse. Okay, so we prefer not to mention them. אמר לו רבי אליעזר, אף אני לא אמרתי לשאול, אלא להזכיר, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם בעונתו. Rabbi Eliezer says, I didn't want you to request the rain or to ask for the rain, only to mention it, to remind it that he makes the wind blow and rain fall in due time. Okay, we're reminding him, we're warming God up to the idea we can start early. Amar lo im ken leolam yeh mazkir. Rabbi Yoshua says, if we're just reminding him, we're not asking for it, then we can all year long remind God that he brings us the rain. All right. So this was the first Mishnah. It brings us already into our topic, which we'll define a little bit better later. But we're talking about two different concepts. We have mentioning the rain and requesting, okay, or asking for the rain. And we have a discussion, when does this start? Let's continue to Mishnah Bet. Ein shoalim et hagshamim ela samuch l'gshamim. Okay, so here we have like a title or a principle that we request the rain only right before the rainy season. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ha'over lifnei hateva beyom tov ha'acharon shel chag, ha'acharon mazkir, harishon eino mazkir. Okay, so we're back to mentioning the rain, not requesting, just mentioning. Rabbi Yehuda says that the person who goes before the ark, meaning the chazan, the one who leads the prayer, on the last day of Chag, of the last day of Sukkot, the last one is the one who mentions, and the first one is not, meaning the last chazan, that's in Musaf, he's the one who mentions, but not the first one, not in Shacharit. So we're waiting for the last day of Sukkot, for the last chazan, the last person who leads the prayer. Beyom tov harishon shel Pesach, harishon mazkir, ha'acharon eino mazkir. So when we get to Pesach, now we've turned to Passover. Again, harishon, the first one is still mentioning the rains, but the next one, the last one, the person davening musaf already stops mentioning it because we're already into Pesach. So we're back to talking about mentioning the rain. We're just reminding that we ask for the rain only when we want the rain to come, and a little bit before that, we mention the rain. Till when do we request the rain? Rabbi Yehuda Omer ad she'yavor HaPasach. We request the rain until the end of Pesach, not what we do nowadays. Rabbi Meir Omer ad she'yetze Nisan, until the end of Nisan. שנאמר ויורד לכם גשם מורה ומלקוש בראשון. In the book of Yoel, when they were needed rain desperately, they were told that they'll be given the rain, the more, which is the first rain, and the malkosh, which is the last rain, in the Rishon, in the first month, meaning in the month of Nisan. So we're willing to have all of the month of Nisan to get the rain. So what did we have here? We mentioned the idea of requesting the rain, but we continued with mentioning the rain. When do you start and when do you finish? And then we talked about when you finish asking, when you stop asking for the rain. If we go to Mishnah Gimel, Bishlosha b'mar cheshvan shoalim et hagshemim. Here we're back to when we're asked for the rain. Rabban Gamliel Omer b'shiv'a bo. On the 7th of Mar Cheshvan, 15 יום אחר החג, 15 days after Sukkot, כדי שיגיע אחרון שבישראל לנהר פרת, so that the last person reaches נהר פרת. Okay, before we continue to the next Mishnah, if you could help me out here and write in the chat box, give a title to what we just read in the Mishnah. What did we talk about? What's the scope of the Mishnah? What's it talking about? Give me a title. If you could please write it in the chat box. What's the title you would give these 3 Mishnayot that we just talked about? Okay. So Ilana Lubin wrote mentioning versus requesting rain. Okay. If we could be more specific when you write down, maybe something a bit more specific. Seasonal prayers for rain, that's nice, okay. Because when you say seasonal prayers, you're already putting in here, Emily, you're putting in here also the time frame that we have, the season. Okay, we're talking about different kinds of prayers, the mentioning versus the requesting, but we also have the season, our time frame in which we're working, right? Okay, anybody else would like to write? Defining the times of the prayers, exactly. The seasonal is really defining the times of the prayers. If anybody else would like to add a title that can sort of grasp what we've learned here. If anyone is on the Facebook Live or whatever and is writing to there, please let us know. Okay, so we're going to leave this right now at these mentioning versus requesting the rain and the defining the exact times, etc. So let's continue now to the next Mishnah. All right. But before we go to the next Mishnah, let's just say in terms of defining these times, we've had a certain time frame of beginning mentioning around Sukkot, and then beginning requesting a little bit after Sukkot, ending the mentioning Pesach, and stopping the requesting at the end of Pesach or the end of Nisan. That's more or less the time frame that we've defined. Okay, I'm continuing to Mishnah Dalet. הגיע 17 במר חשוון ולא ירדו גשמים. Okay, the 17th of Mar Cheshvan arrives and rain hasn't fallen. התחילו היחידים מטענים 3 תעניות. So the individuals, which you can, each one of you try to think to yourself, who would you consider an individual, right? The individuals, מטענים 3 תעניות. They begin to fast 3 fasts for rain. They don't fast 3 days in a row. They do it on Mondays and Thursdays, okay? אוכלים ושותים משחשיכה. One may eat and drink after dark, which means that the fast only starts in the morning. So in the previous evening, you can still eat and drink. ומותרים במלאכה וברחיצה ובשיחה ובנעילת הסנדל ובתשמיש המיטה. They're allowed to engage in the performance of work, bathing, smearing oil on one's body, wearing shoes, and conjugal relations. This might remind you of the things you're not allowed to do on Tisha B'Av and on Yom Kippur. Okay, so these are things you're allowed to do, which means our fasts are a low-level fast. Let's continue to Mishnah Hey. הגיע ראש חודש כסלו ולא ירדו גשמים, בית דין גוזרים 3 תעניות על הציבור. So if we get to the first day of Kislev and we still don't have rain, now Beit Din gives a decree that the entire community is going to fast. אוכלים ושותים מחשיכה, you can still continue eating after dark because the fast begins only in the morning. ומותרים במלאכה, ברחיצה ובשיחה ובנעילת הסנדל ובתשמיש המיטה. You can continue all the things that once you stop them, you know that it's already a serious fast. But we're not in the serious fast, we're in the low-level fast still. Go to Mishnah Vav. עברו אלו ולא נענו. Okay, if these passed and the fast passed and they weren't answered with rain, בית דין גוזרים 3 תעניות אחרות על הציבור. So now we have the בית דין, the court decrees another 3 fasts on the community. אוכלים ושותים מבעוד יום. You need to eat and drink only while it's still day, which means that when it becomes dark, you're not allowed to eat and drink anymore, okay? So this will remind us of the fast of Tisha B'Av and of Yom Kippur, right? ואסורים במלאכה וברחיצה ובשיחה ובנעילת הסנדל ובתשמיש המיטה ונועלים את המרחצאות. So all of these things that you're not allowed on Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur are also on these fasts you're not allowed, and you even lock up the bathing house. עברו אלו ולא נענו. Again, these passed and they still don't get the rains, they're not answered by the rain. בית דין גוזרים עליהם עוד 7. We have another 7. שהן 13 תעניות על הציבור. Altogether, in terms of the community fasts, we already have 13. הרי אלו יתרות על הראשונות. They're even more severe. שבאלו מתריעין. We have some kind of alarm that we sound. ונועלים את החנויות. You lock up the stores. בשני מתאים עם חשיכה. Okay, on Mondays, you can open it towards the evening. ובחמישי מותרים פני כבוד השבת. On Thursdays, we're not going to lock the stores so that people can make their shopping towards Shabbos. And now we're at the last Mishnah, and then we can start our discussion after we've gathered the data and read the Mishnah and see what's going on. עברו אלו ולא נענו. If these fasts have passed and they haven't been answered, ממעטים במשא ומתן. Okay, they decrease business interactions. בבניין ובנטייה, also building and planting. באירוסין ובנישואין, okay, all the engagements, betrothals and marriages. ובשאלת שלום בין אדם לחברו, you don't even greet people. כבני אדם הנזופים למקום, like people have been rebuked by God. היחידים חוזרים ומתענים עד שיצא ניסן. So by this point, only individuals go back to fasting until the end of Nisan. יצא ניסן ולא ירדו גשמים, סימן קללה. If we get all the way to the end of Nisan and there's no rain, this is also a sign of a curse, שנאמר, and here we have a verse from Shmuel, which we'll see later, הלא קציר חיטים היום. And we understand that during the time of the harvest, wheat harvest, already rains at that point would not be good. Okay, so we've went through the Mishnah. If you could help me out again here, please give a title to the second block of Mishnayot that we just read, okay? The one that starts with the 17th of Cheshvan coming and the rain not falling until the end. If you could give me another title, how would you define this second block of the Mishnah? I know I'm already making a certain statement here by deciding to divide up the Mishnah into the 2 parts, but still, if you could give me a title. How would you define the second part of the Mishnah? Okay, so Jennifer writes troubleshooting when rain does not appear. Okay, that's a great one. It's when the problem starts or when the rain doesn't start. Okay, any other titles? Intensifying Emily writes, intensifying protests or prayers in the face of doubt. Okay, it's interesting that you write prayers in the face of doubt because I'm of drought. I'm not even sure that the word prayer is mentioned there. We have matri'in, which is a kind of alarm or maybe a certain kind of rebuking the people or something. The prayers will appear just in the next chapter, but the protest, you see the fast is a certain kind of protest. Also, we'll talk about why the word prayer came to your mind, okay? But I like the word intensifying, okay? Because you see that it's not only how do we react, how do we reply to the fact that we don't have rain, we have an intensifying reaction. We start with the yechidim, then we go to the tzibur, then we make it a more severe fast, and then an even more severe fast, right? We're upgrading it as we go. Okay, so what do I want us to do now? I think that when we just read the chapter itself, okay, we get a certain feeling. We've already started using certain techniques that are the reader's techniques. Meaning, I read a text, I want to sort of divide it and sort of make order. Where does the first part start? Where does it end? Etc. I'm trying to make an order. I'm trying to look for a structure. If I would ask you, how would you say the chapter is built? Wait, Jennifer wrote technical fasting requirements with rain delay. Okay, with rain delay. That's great. So we have technical fasting, as opposed to what you said before, prayers or protests, because of the rain delay. Okay. If I would ask you, let's say you look at the chapter as a whole, how would you define the structure? What according to what structure is the text built? You can also talk if you want, but you can write if you want.
Wait, what, sorry, this is fascinating. But what do you mean by technical? What kind of literary technical, or?
I'm trying to say what considerations did whoever built, assuming Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, built the chapter, okay? So he decided to build it in a certain way. He gave us a certain structure. We can think of different structures in other chapters of Mishnah. Sometimes it's thematic structures, sometimes it's associative, sometimes it's chronological, etc. So how would you define the structure that we're talking about, of this chapter? That I sort of, it's a little bit hard because you don't have it in front of you. Okay, let me see. Doesn't help me.
Maybe something like how it's supposed to go and then what happens when it doesn't go that way.
Okay, so a first way to define the structure of the chapter is when it works and when it doesn't, right? Meaning, let's talk about the norm. What is a normal way of requesting, asking, mentioning rain? That was our first chapter, part of the chapter. And the second part was, as you called, troubleshooting. What do we do when there's a problem, when we don't have rain? Okay, so we have the norm and we have the problem, dealing with problems. Okay, what else? What other way to define our chapters? A way.
It's explanatory. It's as if the assumption is already that the rain didn't fall because of something that we did. So that there's no like thesis, I guess I could say, to defend. It's just explanation how to properly resolve the problem.
Okay, so in a sense, there is a thesis. It is that it's our fault. right?
Yeah.
Meaning
Yeah, it's assumed.
It's assumed. It's portrayed throughout the whole thing that it's our fault and therefore we need to solve the problem, right? So even though it's not stated specifically, that's implied throughout the whole chapter, right? The first part of the chapter, as we defined, was the norm, said what you need to do for things to work, right? And the second part of the chapter was, how do you take responsibility when it didn't work, right? Okay. I want us to notice that there's also a certain chronological order, because we're talking about the time frame, right? We're talking about in the beginning from more or less from Sukkot until Pesach, right? And then we kind of lay it out. We say, okay, you start asking for rain at Sukkot, because before that it's Siman Klala, it's a sign of a curse. Then you, a little bit afterwards, you start requesting the rain. Then in the first part, 1 second, Emily writes, you hinted at this in the beginning when you translated Lehazkir as a reminder. A soft start when talking to God about rain. The first three Mishnayot are the beginning of conversation with God about the rain, which gets harsher when the reminders don't work. Okay, that I wanted to say, Emily, I think that's another consideration in terms of structure, meaning one structure consideration was the norm and out of the norm. Another structure consideration is the chronology, right? Giving us a time frame. And then we're working within this time frame. When the beginning, the first chapter of the Mishnah starts in Sukkot, and the last chapter of the Mishnah ends around Pesach or Nisan, right? So we have a continuum in terms of chronology. But what Emily is saying is we have another structure consideration, which we can call as, I actually looked for a good translation of this word. We could call it as graduated, as different levels that are escalating, right? So things get harsher. So the first part of the chapter, when we're talking about the norm, we start with lehazkir, reminding, and then requesting, right? That's also built in levels, right? We start with the softer and then we get harsher. And then in the second part of the chapter, also when we're dealing with the out of the norm, intensify, okay, that's a good word. It also intensifies. It starts softer and it gets harsher and intensifies and escalates as we go ahead, right? Okay, so we have here a few considerations in terms of structure, but what I want us to do is see how we can see the different structures throughout the words, especially play on words that that the Mishnah employs. So second, I'm going to go to our last chapter. Yes, Emily? You want to say something? Okay, making this a bit smaller so you can see more.
I'm thinking,
Yes.
this isn't specifically about structure, but you can maybe not answer it, whatever, I don't want to take you afield, but it sounds like the Mishnah is legislating, very, very clearly the human side of, what do we do about of the conversation with God. I'm trying to think of other times or other situations where, the rabbis tell us so specifically how to, I guess, tefillah in general. I mean, or maybe this is the basis. Yeah, I mean, it's, I don't know, I'm just kind of wondering about that. And it seems like a unique, like, in other words, the rabbis aren't just leaving anything to a spontaneous outpouring on the part of the people, but instead they're sort of expecting this almost. It seems like, there's this is what happens sometimes, and we're giving you very, very scripted, almost very clear guidelines how to respond to it. I don't know. I can think of other things.
It's interesting. You're saying that they're legislating the human and God relationship, whereas the rain is in the midst, but really we're giving it guidelines. I wasn't planning on talking exactly about that, but I think that they're doing it because they didn't like the spontaneous. Meaning, if you look in the Mishnah, if you go to chapter 3 in Ta'anit, you'll meet the very famous story about Choni HaMe'agil. Or people came to him and said, okay, we need you now to daven for us. You need to pray. And the Chachamim didn't like that because it felt like instead of using a gradual and intentional and proactive and community response to the fact that there isn't rain, we went to the magician to solve our problems, right? So the legislation here is not only how do you communicate with God, but how do you take responsibility for a situation? And the responsibility isn't by looking for all kinds of, the fast lane. We're going here in the slow, steady, gradual lane, which also engages all the people slowly. It starts with the individuals who take responsibility for the community, but then you bring in the community, and we have this really escalating a response, which is also educational, right? It's a way of saying, take responsibility for what's going on and don't just look for the spontaneous or for the one person who's going to take responsibility for everybody. Okay, so I want now to notice the words that I've highlighted. Okay, here it was pretty easy. And actually, I'll share with you that I've been teaching Mishnah in all kinds of different frameworks in different places. One of the places I taught is in a college here in Israel in a MA program. And I taught them all kinds of literary tools that they can use in order to analyze the Mishnah and try to understand the deeper meaning. And I gave them papers to write. And what I'm bringing to you here is not a chapter I learned on my own, but papers that I got from several different students who noticed the things after I taught them the tools. And I liked it so much because it's so simple that I use it from then. I use it myself also. So what do we have here? So I started off with, looking for words, recurring words, and not only recurring words, but also I would call it a semantic field. Okay? Meaning all in gray, I highlighted all of the dates. Okay, so we have Chag, B'Chag, we have Pesach, Nisan. Okay, we have those dates, and also later on, Mar Cheshvan and Kislev, etc. We have, so that's a certain kind of semantic field, noticing the dates, and the dates help us give this chronological structure. It gives us the time frame. I've also highlighted the words that, the recurring words like mazkirim, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It would be nice if it stayed 7, but 8 is also great. Okay, so we have mazkirin versus the shoalim, right? We have lishol, shoalim, shoalim, shoalim. So we have here the just the words that keep on coming back and popping up. It's something that we notice. It comes back again. Now, one of the things that I want us to notice, besides using words that give us a chronology, I want you to notice the words rishon and acharon. Okay, so look at the screen, and you'll see that I highlighted harishon with this turquoise and ha'acharon with the blue. And what I find interesting is that there is a play on words here because the word rishon and acharon don't always refer to the same things. Okay? Rabbi Eliezer Omer, miyom tov harishon shel Chag. So we're talking about the first day of Sukkot. Rabbi Yoshua Omer, miyom tov ha'acharon shel Chag. So we're also talking about the day of Sukkot, right? The first day of Sukkot or the last day of Sukkot. But then when we go to Mishnah Bet, רבי יהודה אומר, העובר לפני התיבה ביום טוב האחרון של חג. Again, we're talking about the last day. האחרון מזכיר, הראשון אינו מזכיר. Who is הראשון and האחרון here now? They're not the first and last day of Chag, they're the first and last.
Chazanim.
Chazanim, okay? So we're having like, we're playing with the words here. And then, B'yom Tov Harishon Shel Pesach, we're back to talking about the days. Harishon Mazkir, Acharon Eino Mazkir, we're back to talking about the people, the Chazan. And then, when you get to Mishnah Gimel, okay, Rabban Gamliel Omer b'shiv'a bo 15 yom achar chag. That's when we start asking for the rain. Kedei sheyagia acharon shebeYisrael lenehar prat. Who's this acharon? Which acharon are we talking about? The last person. Okay, the last person who made pilgrimage during the Chag. We're waiting for him to get home. So how do you understand this phenomenon where we have the words Rishon and Acharon recurring, but each time they're talking about something different? What are we trying to achieve here? What literary achievement do we get from using Rishon, Acharon, Rishon, and each time talking about something else? What would you say? What feeling does it give you?
It connects things. It connects the themes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Using the same words, it comes to show that there's a connection. There's a connection between the date that we choose and the person that we choose to be requesting or mentioning. Okay, and also that the date is also defined by the people and the people that we're thinking about and taking into consideration. What else? What other feeling do you get here? Acharon, Rishon, Acharon, Rishon, Rishon, Acharon, Rishon, Acharon.
Maybe a sense of order.
Okay, a sense of order. We have the beginning and the end, the beginning and the end. And not only order, what other sense?
Timing. The timing is important.
Okay, timing is important. Okay, Ilana writes, it gives a feeling of the chatchila and b'diavad. Okay, the beginning and the end, the beginning and the end. I'll share with you the feeling that I get. You don't have to agree, okay? Literature is also very subjective, and the way certain tools affect one person aren't going to be the same as the next person. But for me, it gives a feeling, a certain repetitive feeling, like it's a cycle. Rishon Acharon, Rishon Acharon, Rishon Acharon, right? We start the Mishnah starts with starting and Chag, right? We start with when do we mention the Gshamim, and we start with Sukkot. Then we go to Pesach, right? Pesach is in the middle, and then we're back at Sukkot in Mishnah Gimel, when we start asking for the rain. Meaning, in terms of structure, we say, when do you start mentioning? When do you stop mentioning? When do you stop asking or requesting? When do you start asking or requesting? So it sort of gives us we can call it a chiastic structure, but it also gives kind of like this feeling. We start in Sukkot and we end in Sukkot, and we have like a certain cycle. I think that the feeling of the cycle also gives us this feeling like this is, how would we call it? This is the norm, right? It gives us a feeling of routine. We begin and we end, and we begin and we end, and the beginning and the end, and the first and the last, and the first and the last, and it gives us this feeling of a cycle that we're going through that's very natural and to be expected. Okay, so this also, using the words of Rishon and Acharon, we're strengthening the chronological cycle or structure, and we're also giving a sense of a cycle which strengthens the way we perceive the first part of the Mishnah as defining the norm, the routine, the regular, what to be expected. Okay, so it kind of gives us this feeling of a cycle, of a normal cycle that we're working within it. Of course, that's all in the first part of the Mishnah. When we get to the second part of the Mishnah, I want us to notice a different literary technique. And instead of using the same words for different things, this time we're going to use different words for the same thing, okay? Meaning, instead of using a charon once for talking about the day, and once for talking about the chazan, and once for talking about the people making pilgrimage and then going back home, we're going to talk about exactly the same thing, but we're going to use different words. And now we're going to try to understand what do these words come to tell us, okay? So notice that in Mishnah Dalet, the words that we use are, okay, Hegia a certain date, velo yirdu gshamim. And then in Mishnah Hey again, Hegia a certain date, velo yirdu gshamim, meaning we arrived, a certain date arrived, and the rain isn't coming down. It's not raining. Wonderful. What happens in Mishnah Vav and Zayin? We're using a totally different phrase. Instead of saying Hegia a certain date, velo yirdu gshamim, we're using the phrase Avru elu velo na'anu. Okay, these fasts have passed and they were not answered. And then again, Avru elu velo na'anu. It's the second part of Mishnah Vav. And then in Mishnah Zayin, Avru elu velo na'anu. Okay, so I don't know how many of you noticed this, but once you notice it, it kind of like shouts out at you, right? What are these differences trying to tell us? What is the significance of using one phrase versus another? I could have used the exact same phrases. I could have used Hegia such and such velo yirdu gshamim, Hegia such and such and lo yirdu gshamim. We're back to lo yirdu gshamim at the end of Nisan. So what is the significance of changing the way we say it, of switching the phrase? So share with me your thoughts. What's the difference between Hegia, a certain time, velo yirdu gshamim, a certain time came and the rain didn't come, or these passed and they were not answered?
In general,
What do you get out of it? It could be general, it can be specific, whatever you want.
so are we writing or talking?
Whatever you prefer. You can talk now. Now
So in
that
general, you spoke about the cycles, the natural, the predictability that implies a certain predictability. By the end of the parak, the predictability of the cycle has been shattered.
okay.
You sort of ease into it, and you can imagine the emotions, the predicted time arrives, but it doesn't, the rain doesn't come. And then in the last three, there's really more intense. It's almost like it's more pessimistic, almost.
Okay.
Avru,
you detect a certain feeling here.
yes, and you can
Mhm.
imagine the people,
Okay. So Ilana writes that in the first cases something didn't happen. Stam. Okay. I'll give it I'll phrase it. In the first case, it's a technical description. A certain time came and the rain didn't come down. It's totally technical. It's a factual way of telling what happened. And Ilana continues in the second set that people weren't answered. It's more personal. It's not only personal, which I think that's, Emily, what you're trying to say. The feeling comes here through of how people perceive it. But I think it's already not a technical description. It's a moral description. It's a description that has to do with the significance of what's going on. Meaning, in the first two Mishnayot, when we talk about a certain time came and the rain didn't come, this is telling us what happened. Now the question is, how do we deal with it? But when we're talking about Avru elu velo na'anu, this is a significance already. that we fasted and we were not answered. Now, I want you to notice in terms of the play on words here, that the word lo na'anu is a play on word together with the word ta'anit. Na'ana and hit'ana, okay? Meaning the way we reacted to the fact that the rain didn't come is a ta'anit, right? And what we're expecting in terms of a cycle is that we lehit anot and God la anot, okay, to be answered, okay? There also might be a certain play on word of lish'ol and la anot, right? To ask, request, and to answer. But one second, but here it's really very clear that we're looking, when we do the ta'anit, we're not just fasting, is we're asking for a ma'ane. Yes, Jennifer.
Hey, I just looked up because my Hebrew I'm studying every day, but I have lots to learn. That higia, so I'm just interested, has another meaning of to be deserved, which would go well with what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Even though here they didn't deserve it or they didn't get it.
Right, yeah. But and the rain hadn't come. Yeah.
Right.
And then would you just, so sorry, I wish I already knew this already. All I can think of with Tanit is, the Tanaim and all, but what is the other meaning that you're using it for? The
Ta'anit is not Tanaim. Ta'anit is a fast.
Oh, a fast.
The word Ta'anit is a fast. It's from the word inui.
Oh,
Inui
right.
is affliction, okay?
Yeah.
It's okay. Don't feel bad, okay? I totally feel for you. I like your sentence. I wish I knew this already. I go through life with that feeling. I wish I knew this already. But all we can do is slowly, step by step, do what we can. Okay, but the word ta'anit is from the word inui, like inui nefesh. That's what we do on Yom Kippur. Okay, so we're afflicting ourselves. It's more specifically used usually in the times of Chazal and also in our times as a fast, like Ta'anit Esther, right? The fast of Esther. So the Ta'anit is a fast, but we could have written some, right? It could have been some, but there's a play on words here. That's a Ta'anit. The Inui wants a Ma'ane. Ma'ane is an answer, okay? La'anot is to answer, okay? Le'anot is to afflict. La'anot is to answer. Okay, so what we're really doing here is we're looking for an answer. So we talked about the chapter being built as going from level to level, and it's escalating. And we can see here through the words the escalation where we're moving from a technical problem to a spiritual problem, meaning through the words, the Mishnah is telling us that it's not only a problem that we don't have water, the problem is that God's not answering us. We're picking up the phone and he's not answering, right? We're knocking and he's not answering. It's not only, okay, Emily says that Tanit and Mane also is on Yom Kippur Haftarah. Okay, very nice. Okay, so here we have a way of using the words. In the beginning, we used one word for the two different things or three different things. Now we're using different words because we're trying to say that the significance of what happens when the rain doesn't come down changes throughout time. In the beginning, it's just a technical problem, a physical problem, and then it's also a spiritual problem. Now, I want us to notice one more thing that we're doing here with a play on words or with using a thoughtful use of the words, and that is certain kind of a frame that the Mishnah creates by using the same words in the first Mishnah and in the last Mishnah. Okay, I'd like us to notice. We have in our first Mishnah, when do we mention the might of the rain? And Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yoshua, then Rabbi Yoshua says, "Ho'ir ve'en hagshamim ela siman klala b'chag." Lama mazkir. We don't want to mention the might of the rain in the Chag on Sukkot. Why? Because it's a siman klala. What's a siman klala? It's a sign of a curse. Why is rain on Sukkot a sign of a curse?
Drives us from the sukkah.
It drives us out of the sukkah. It means that God isn't welcoming us into his sukkah. He doesn't want us to serve him in the sukkah, so he's chasing us out, right? So that's Siman Klala. In the last Mishnah, we also have Siman Klala. Ronnie, I don't understand your question. I apologize. Okay, but I'm just going to go to Mishnah Zayin. Mishnah Zayin says, what happens if we get to the end of Nisan and the rain still isn't coming down? So the first thing you do is you kind of downplay on life, okay? You sort of take a certain kind of time out from life. You don't do a lot of business, and you don't build, and you don't plant, and you don't get married, etc. Okay? And the last sentence here is Yatsa Nisan velo yordug shamim. Okay, we're already at the end of Nisan. There's no more rain. What are we going to do? Siman Klala. That's why we stop fasting at the end of Nisan, because now we don't want the water anymore. Because if there's rain after Nisan, that's also a sign of a curse. Sheneemar halok tzir chitim hayom. So we'll talk about this pasuk in just a second. So let's just I want, first of all, notice that we have here a certain inclusio, or a way that we structure the chapter so it begins and ends with the same words. By the way, not very happy words, right? We're starting our chapter with a sign of a curse, and we're ending our chapter with a sign of a curse. But why are we doing that? Okay, what do I get? What does Rebbe get out of beginning the chapter with a curse and ending the chapter with a curse? Why use this literary tool? Yes, Jennifer.
Well, I love the literary tools. That always is just a thrill for me. But sort of like, I'll use the modern lingo, personal agency, although I hate that phrase. I don't care for it. The idea that this is all saying, be a good person, do what God is, Hashem is requiring, because your very life depends on it.
Okay, so you mean Siman Klala is kind of like a warning type thing. Listen very well. Okay, Ilana writes, the Siman Klala shows how fine a line it is between rain as a blessing and a curse. Okay, how important timing is. Okay, that's wonderful, Ilana, and I want us to in the few minutes that we have left, I want us to really open up this this point. Okay, so before we get back to what Ilana said, I want us to notice that in general, if you read the chapter, you start off reading the chapter and you ask yourself, what is this chapter trying to tell us? Okay, so you say to yourself, I know what this chapter is trying to tell us. It's trying to tell us that we're dependent on God for rain, and therefore we need to ask nicely. Helps if we butter him up a little bit before. So we'll start with mentioning it, reminding him, right? It sounds like such a, like Yiddish mama, right? I'm just going to remind you a little bit before I ask. I'm not going to ask you yet. I'm just going to remind you. Later we'll ask, okay? So we're dependent on God. We're going to do it nicely. We're going to be good Jewish people. We'll remind him, and then we'll ask him, etc. And when it doesn't work, we'll also go and pray, and not pray, but even if it doesn't say prayer here, it's obvious that we're asking because we're expecting a certain kind of answer. And we'll fast and we'll take it upon ourselves, and we'll go higher and higher, expecting or hoping for God to answer us. And that also explains that everything is dependent on God, but also dependent on our actions towards God, right? And in a sense, we have that already specifically in the Torah, right? You go and you say, okay, what did the Mishnah here do? It took a portion from the Torah and said, okay, let's put this into halachic terms. What's the portion in the Torah? The land that you're about to answer and possess. It's not like Egypt, which you have come from. In the land of Egypt, okay, for the land of Egypt, you have water. You can be watered by your own labors or with your legs like a vegetable garden. לארץ אשר אתם עוברים שמה לרשתה, ארץ הרים ובקעות, למטר השמיים תשתה מים. And the land that you are about to cross into and possess, a land of hills and valleys, soaks up its water from the rains of heaven. Right? So in Israel, you don't have plentiful rain wherever you want. You have to wait for the rain. ארץ אשר השם אלוהיך דורש אותה תמיד, עיני השם אלוהיך בא מראשית השנה ועד אחרית שנה. It is a land which your God Hashem looks after, on which your God Hashem always keeps an eye from year's beginning to year's end. Okay, and therefore, והיה אם שמוע תשמעו את מצוותיי, אשר אנוכי מצווה אתכם היום לאהבה את השם אלוהיכם ולעובדו בכל לבבכם ובכל נפשכם. Therefore, if then you obey the commandments that I enjoy upon you this day, loving your God Hashem and serving with all your heart, and so I will grant you rain for your land in the season, etc. Meaning, the Torah says specifically the land of Israel is a land that needs rain. And because it's not something that just appears and you need God to give you the rain, so he'll look and see, do you deserve it? Don't you deserve it? God is watching the land, Mirashit Shana, Dachrit Shana, from the beginning until the end, right? Marishon ve'ad Acharon. We can hear it here, the Rishon and Acharon that we had in our Mishnah, sort of alluding to the psukim in the Torah. That's great. So when you think to yourself, if we want rain, we need to be good. But, and here's an important note, the Mishnah is hinting at something much wider. And this is what I think Ilana said before. The Mishnah says, when you look at the structure of the Mishnah, you think to yourself that the Mishnah is talking from Sukkot until Nisan. That's the scope of the Mishnah, right? So even though we have this sort of cycle in our mind, this cycle is limited from Sukkot until Pesach. That's what we're talking about. But what does the Mishnah do? It says before that, it's Siman Klara. After that, it's Siman Klara. And by that, we're including the rest of the cycle. Meaning, from Sukkot until Nisan, we want the rain. And getting the rain is dependent on what we do. From Nisan until Sukkot, we don't want the rain. And therefore, not getting rain is dependent on what we do. Okay? Meaning, the Mishnah quotes here another pasuk. In the end, the Mishnah, actually the only pasuk the Mishnah quotes is from Shmuel Aleph. Shmuel Aleph, the chapter 12, Shmuel is rebuking the people for asking a king. And then he says this, Gam ata hityetzvu ur'u et hadavar hagadol hazeh asher Hashem oseh le'enechem. Now stand by and see the marvelous thing that the Lord will do before your eyes. Halok tzir chitim hayom. That's a part of the pasuk that was quoted in the Mishnah. Ekra el Hashem. Right? It is a season of the wheat harvest. I will pray to God. Ve'yiten kolot umatar. He will send thunder and rain. Ud'u ur'u kiratchem rabba asher asitem b'nei Hashem lishol lachem melech. And then you will take thought and realize what a wicked thing you did in the sight of the Lord when you asked for a king. ויקרא שמואל אל השם, ויתן השם קולות ומטר ביום ההוא, וירא כל העם מאוד את השם ואת שמואל. So Samuel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord sent thunder and rain that day, and the people stood in the awe of the Lord and of Shmuel. So what is the pasuk here trying to tell us? It's saying, you think you need to work hard only between Sukkot and Pesach to make sure you have rain. No. You need to work also the other half of the year to make sure you don't have rain. Because now, on one hand, okay, I see, Jennifer, you're smiling, okay? We thought we were off the hook, but really we're not off the hook. But I think it's not only that, it's also a way of saying communication with God continues throughout the year long. In certain parts of the year, a communication will be, does God give us the rain that we want or not? The other part of the year, God can communicate also by giving us rain when we don't need it, by ruining our harvest. If we think the first way God communicated with the world was through rain that we didn't want in the flood, right? That's maybe the first kind of communication through rain. So the Mishnah, by putting Siman Klara in the beginning, Siman Klara then says, notice that even though the structure of the Mishnah is from Sukkot to Pesach, we're hinting also at the rest of the year, and we're hinting that the communication with God continues well beyond what the Mishnah is talking about specifically, and the guidelines, the sides include much more. So here we see how the structure, the words, the allusions to the psukim and the Tanakh, the play on words, the games, the using different words for the same things or same words for different things, all deepen the meaning of the text and the Mishnah. So that's it for today. I'm sorry I kind of got to the last second.
It was fabulous.
Thank you.
You were wonderful.
Mishnah is great, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Just thrilling.
Okay.
But
And
thank
yeah.
you for showing us, I mean, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Hopefully,
sorry, go
so
ahead.
hopefully we'll meet again next week and we'll learn Mishnah of Psachim. Okay, I'll send you ahead of time. Okay.
Any more questions or comments before we close today's class? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Rabbanit Sternberg for teaching us this interesting class. And I believe next week is with you as well, Rabbanit Sternberg, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and thank you also to everyone who joined us on Facebook and those of us who are here on Zoom. Just a couple of reminders. We still have dozens of classes scheduled during this fall's month, and we hope to see you throughout the week as we delve into a variety of topics and work on our skills. You can learn more about those classes and register for them at 5783.drisha.org. And yeah, thank you so much again for being part of our learning community. And thank you again, Dr. Sternberg. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Lehitraot.
Bye-bye.